My name is Eric Long, and I'm the game director at CMON, and this I proposed this panel to Dice Tower Con a few weeks ago because I want to have this is besides being essentially my favorite show. I want to take an opportunity to do a panel like this for a convention of this size, where it's a little bit more intimate. We get to do a little bit more back and forth and really answer questions that you guys want to hear. So the point of this panel, what I submitted was a panel called From the Director's Chair. So, since I'm the director for CMON, I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to ask anything you wanted, no matter how broad, no matter how deep, no matter how detailed or sensitive or even difficult the question might be. You can hear directly from me, and I will answer as candidly and as honestly as my NDA and legalese will allow. Just a couple quick questions before I'm going to start off with a little bit of rambling, and then I'll get right to your questions. But just, how many of you guys have heard of CMON? All right, I like this panel. How many of you have not heard of CMON? All right. CMON is a publisher. We make games for whom I am the game director, which basically, I'll tell you what that means in a minute. But we make games. We're very well known for big games with lots of minis and high production values, like Zombicide, Blood Rage, Rising Sun, Zombicide, Black Plague, Zombicide, Green Horde. And the forthcoming Death May Die, which is a Cthulhu game by Rob Daviau and myself, which is coming out in a few. In fact, it's coming out on the 10th. It's coming out on Kickstarter on the 10th, and I actually asked specifically to delay the Kickstarter so that I could come here to Dice Tower Con first and talk a little bit about it first, and then have it released after I'm on my way back home, so I wouldn't miss the beginning of the Kickstarter. Because I'm a glutton for punishment. Just to say a couple of quick words about what my job is and what I do at the company, and what we're a little bit about the vision, what we're aiming at, why I took the job, and what I'm hoping to accomplish with CMON. So the game director is a position that they did not have before, right? And the idea was that we want to have somebody who would to have a grand unified vision for the games that we release, to give us an identity in the marketplace. We already have a pretty strong identity, but we just want to make it a little bit tighter and a little bit more focused, and to establish what it means to be a CMON game. I can talk lots about that over the next hour. So my job at CMON is to, of course, still continue to design games and continue to develop games, but it's also to lead a development team and a strategic team to decide what games we publish, when we publish them, what order they come out, and to oversee the development and, to a lesser extent, the production, the graphics, and the other components of those games for everything that we do, which is something I've kind of wanted to do for many, many, many years, which is, for all intents and purposes, running the creative side of a game company without having to run a game company, because that's not interested in that, and you don't want a game company run by a creative guy like me anyway. So I just take care of the creative side, and the business end is run by very smart, very capable directors across the board. So the grand plan, right? The grand vision of CMON. Everybody knows to a degree, right? We're sort of known as the Kickstarter company and the high production quality company. And neither of those are really going to change too much. I mean, Kickstarter is a platform that's been very, very good for us. We develop games, a fair number of games that are really optimized for the Kickstarter platform for a couple of reasons, right? We wanted to make we want to make games that are really, really bold in one way or another, right? Either games that are for a very niche audience that we're not exactly sure where it is, like games like Hate, or games like even games like Blood Rage or Rising Sun, where we want to go so over the top with production. We needed to be able to prove that there's a market for something so expensive to produce before going straight to retail. And of course, Kickstarter is an amazing marketing platform, right? We wanted to make sure that when we do our big AAA games, that every one of them is a big event when it's released. And then that actually, especially in today's crowded marketplace, that helps to generate a lot of buzz on the back end of the Kickstarter too. So games like Rising Sun or Blood Rage actually have a much longer, we found at least, have a much longer shelf life post Kickstarter and retail because of that big event that we started with. We got a lot of buzz and a lot of buzz about the game at launch, and now we're continuing to sell way, way more of that on the back end. One of the big things that I want to bring to CMON is a further crystallization of what our identity is as a company, what our identity is as a creative company. What kind of games do we make? And in a nutshell, I want to say we're a company that puts all the love in every box, right? Which, I mean, that's the least corporate way I could put the, like, we want to make a game that, where either, I mean, of course the game design is as much about gamers making games that we love for people that, for a market that we hope agrees with us, but we also want to make games that are tactile, that are touchable, that have amazing table presence, that make you look across the room, no matter what kind of game it is, wonder what that game is, what's going on over there, but also immediately get a sense of why that's cool, and by just looking at the game, have an idea of what the game plays like. And so that's not just miniature games. That also is games like Potion Explosion, or our forthcoming Gizmos, or a couple other titles, one of which I can talk about, which I can't. But we are going to be doing more and more broad family games with amazing components that facilitate that gameplay. So one of those games which we sort of soft announced, and I apologize, I actually had a little PowerPoint presentation that I was going to put together, but before, like about an hour ago, I realized that was like what's way too corporate for a show like this. So I'm just going to talk about it. Imagine there it is. Imagine I had a slide, and it showed games with really pretty components. One of which is a game called Sugar Blast, which is going to be coming out later on this year. A game designed by Benjamin Rossett and Matthew O'Malley, who are the designers of Between Two Cities for some of my games. Great game, by the way. If you have a chance, it's definitely recommend it. It's basically it's a match 3 app in board game form that you play on a really, really nice all plastic board that tilts in 4 different directions depending on where you're seated at the table, and you play a little match 3 game where you interchange 2 tokens, which are of course nice big plastic candy tokens, and if you make a match of 3, you take them, you score one of them as your score, and you put the rest back in the bag, and then you tilt the board toward you, whatever direction you're facing, and to collapse the rest of them. Now, the difference between this and, of course, in the app games is that depending on where you're sitting at the table, the board will collapse in a different way. So if I'm sitting across from, if I'm sitting 90 degrees to your right, I will actually I'll tilt the board toward me, and then everything will collapse this way. So we actually create different further matches and different combinations than it would if you were the one who completed that match. So it gives you a little bit more to think about besides just the usual match 3 mechanics. And of course, the game also has a number of little extra components like token special powers. And and we put some nice little modern board game design into it. So like it has, every game has a unique goal for the game. So like in one of the versions of the games, you will need to be the first person to collect one tile of one match of every color. First person to do that will win. And there's like 10 to 15 others. And then there's also another, on top of that, there's also a special ability card in the game that will give everybody a special ability for that game. Either a special rule that is affected, or a special new type of token, or a special power that people get to use once a turn or once a game. But the combination of those two cards changes the texture of that game. And the game, by the way, that plays like 15 minutes or so. It's really, really fast, optimized for play for demo play in game stores and game cafes, but it's unbelievably replayable. It's one of the games I'm most excited about. It's actually the second game after Gizmos that I signed for CMON. But it's one of those, like, now I explained it. What I was hoping to do is just show you a picture of it and you'd know exactly what it played like. So imagine I showed you a cool slide and you were like, yeah, that's how it plays. That's the vision. Thank you. No. All right. So that's one example. So we're going to continue making big box AAA games. In fact, I have in the last year that I've been with CMON, I have spent some time with the dev team, and we've put together a plan for. We actually know the next 7 big AAA games that we're coming out with over the next year and a half. We've been working on them already for 9 months plus. So one of the things you guys will notice is that every game that's coming out from here on in actually has a lot more preparation and a lot more lead time put into it. We do release a fair number of games, but one of the number one criteria that I care about is, especially in the marketplace like today, where it was so crowded, there's so many games out there, we want to make sure that the games are either one of two things. They're either as close as we can come to best in class in that category. So if we're coming out with a game that's been in an overcrowded genre and something that you've seen a ton of, that it's something that'll at least be a really fresh approach to it. For example, Death May Die is a Cthulhu dungeon crawl. It's Cthulhu, but it's rather than a game about investigating the existential yada 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 yada, of which there are many excellent games already on the market. It's a game about shooting Cthulhu in the face. It's a game about empowerment and ridiculous, over-the-top action adventure with a little side dose of investigation. But it's got all the Cthulhu tropes. It's got the Cthulhu vibe. The investigators in the game already start the game having amassed so much power in order to beat Cthulhu that they are already insane to start the game. And that's one of the twists of the game. You draw random insanity, and that insanity dictates how you're supposed to play. So, for example, one of my favorite examples is we have a character, Rasputin, who can die a number of times in the game without affecting gameplay, but he can have psychotic outbreaks, which every once in a while he just goes nuts and attacks the nearest thing and just does straight up damage to them. Now, if you time it right, you can actually set him up so that he will only be attacking enemies, and you actually get to get free damage to the enemies and not your friends. So it's all about, of course, you don't time it right, you go out and attack your friends, and you might lose because, well, sorry. But so we have a fair number of insanities like that, though that are meant to be, like, they're not only just flavorful and crazy and fun, but it's also a chance for you to play cleverly and overcome a lot of what we used to call fatal drawbacks in classic Cthulhu. Anyway, so games like Death May Die, even though it is, it's Cthulhu, which there have been a lot of games, and it's dungeon crawl, a lot of games, we haven't really seen that combo put together. And the gameplay that Rob and I put together, we're really excited about. Like, I haven't seen that combination, and that it feels fresh. So either games like that, and of course we put a ton of development work and a lot of design work into it. So it's we take our games very seriously. We take polish very seriously. We play test the heck out of our games. So besides all that, we're also going to do a number of games that are totally off the rails in terms of formula. So we have 2 games coming out next year that, of course, I can't say too much, but I can tease because it's my favorite thing to do. Like we have this one game I know that's coming up in-house, designed by myself and one of the designers of Arcadia Quest, Guilherme, and our lead developer, Fel Barros, who, when we started, the game's been about 2 years in the making, and we stopped and restarted the game several times and thrown it away several times. But we got to a point where we were like, all the developers in the department were like, I have no idea how you even develop a game like this. Like, I don't know if it works. I don't know how to make it work. And the fact that that's the type of thing that got me really excited, because there wasn't a standard formula you could apply to it. Everybody, they stepped up. Like, we're currently doing we're in the late design, early development stages of the game, and the new questions that we have to ask when putting this game together is so exciting and so fresh that even if it turns out the marketplace doesn't agree with it, at least it will be, at least it'll, that's the expression I like to use, at least it'll wake up some players who are a little tired of that particular genre. So, to my mind, with those games, we either want to give you something that's fresh or just, I call it Blizzard-esque, without invoking names. Like, just something that's like, something you know that so much love has been put into that game that even if it's not for you, you know that we've taken great care of that game. Or it's just crazy, and it's new. Those things are going to show up on Kickstarter, and I hope the market agrees. I had a couple extra notes here, but I want to note that in addition to being the game director, I am also the lead artist. And this is an expression that I did. This is a little piece I did for Death May Die. Right? Adrian Smith, eat your heart out. You take one look at that, you know exactly what this game is about. That's my PowerPoint for the day. Okay, before I have a couple other points, but does anybody have any questions that I'd like to ask? We have a microphone up there if anybody wants to use it, or if you want to raise your hand, we can come get it for you. Does anybody have any questions about either our things that we can talk about new games coming up, or a philosophy of design, philosophy of development, the direction that we're going into? I see and we're making you walk all the way to the microphone. This is amazing. We're going to do a commentary track. It's a long, long walk. There could definitely be a more efficient path between where you were and the microphone. That is a development problem. It is not a design problem.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, everyone. I was going to ask, is that Starcadia Quest you were talking about?
No. So stay there. Starcadia Quest is something we actually, we spoiled, unbeknownst to me. I didn't even know that we were spoiling it. Like, we've been working on that forever. So it showed up as a teaser at the end of the Zombicide Invader campaign. I was like, oh, there it is, so I can talk about it now. So yeah, one of the Kickstarters that we'll be doing later on this year is for a new game in the Arcadia franchise called Starcadia Quest. So it is what you think it is. It's Arcadia Quest in space. It's a brand new game. It's semi-compatible with Arcadia Quest. We'll release lots of material so that you can use old Arcadia Quest stuff with it. But it is a game made by the Arcadia Quest team, myself, Guile, Fred, and Tiago. This game was actually based on us spending a lot of time with players that play Arcadia Quest in game stores, at stores, at cafes, in their homes, and we were noticing a lot of things about the way people played Arcadia Quest, and we wanted to make a game that answered a lot of unanswered questions for them and allowed them to play in a way that we think is optimal for them to play. And one of those audiences is parents and their kids. I can't say too much. I can't give any concrete details, but what I can say is, from a vision standpoint, we actually want to make a game that was a little bit even simpler than the original Arcadia Quest, but deeper. So there's, in terms of rules complexity, setup complexity, it is smooth as butter, but there's a lot of obvious and non-obvious upgrades that we made to the game that just make it play faster, smoother, and there's some stuff missing that I don't think anybody's even going to notice was missing, but there's also some new cool stuff which I can't talk about. But the running joke at the office was, we were working on an Arcadia Quest expansion, I think it was, and like 2 years ago, and it was another fantasy genre, and the artist just wrote back. He wrote me an email. The full body text of the email was, "I'm bored." Signed off. And it was like, well, I mean, we can't, like, I'm sure we could have generated some really cool art, even though we could have made him push through. But I was like, well, what's exciting to you? And he was like, space. And from that email, one of us, somebody said, like, yeah, obviously, Starcadia Quest. And we never changed the name. Like that game, it was the code name for the game, but everybody, we actually sat down for a brainstorm meeting to come up with a official name for the game. It was like, no, Starcadia Quest. It's obviously Starcadia Quest, and I can't even think of it any other way. But yeah, that one will be coming up later, and I'll be able to talk about it in more detail probably at the next convention we're at. Cool. No, that's not true. That's Gen Con, so no, I can't.
I had another question about what a day in the director's chair looked like.
What does a day in the director's chair look like? Well, I'll tell you. Wake up in the morning at Dice Tower Con, go to the pool, eat amazing marshmallow cookies brought to you by adoring fans, do some emails, do a talk for an attentive, diverse, and an inquisitive audience. Step 4, blank. Step 5, profit.
Thank you.
That's all right. So the real answer is, let's think of it as a round sequence for a game, right? So it's a round sequence. It's probably a little bit more like a Euro game like Puerto Rico, where it's got sort of a variable phase order, right? It has a vague structure. At the beginning, there's a setup phase, which is meetings, lots and lots of meetings. I'm based in Singapore, in the administrative and strategic office in Singapore, and so which is 12 hours ahead of the rest of the world, the rest of the Western world. And so my team is in Brazil. So I get up early in the morning and I do a number of meetings with my dev team, usually starting about 8 o'clock, running until about 11. Then I go into the office, do meetings with the other directors of the company, with our director of Asia, who's expanding our business in Asia, with our creative director, who we sit down and do a lot of art coordination with different projects, and one of our lead producers and head of Kickstarter, who's preparing campaign plans for the games that we're doing there. So more meetings. Lunch with excellent Singaporean street food. It's spicy and delicious. Train ride home, more meetings in the evening, and play testing either at the local game store or at friends' houses. I'm usually play testing whatever game is, as I put it, most on fire at the time. And then more meetings at night, where I'm meeting with my night, their morning, people who don't want to come, who don't want to stay late at night to meet with me. So usually I meet with the developers who work in the afternoon to the evening at around 8, and then the producers in Brazil who come in early in the morning, my late at night. So lots and lots of meetings. And on the side, I design games.
Thank you.
Thank you. More questions?
I have a question.
I have maybe an answer.
Okay. So, how do you come up with your ideas? So, you know the one you're talking about? It's like a match 3 game where you slide the board. How did you come up with that idea?
Well, so I cheated. It's not my idea. So, that game was actually designed by Matthew O'Malley and Ben Rossett, who are designers of Between Two Cities, which is by Stonemaier Games. I cannot recommend the game more. It's an excellent tile drafting game. They probably have it here at the show. I do not have ownership stake in the company. I just really like the game. So one of the big part of my job is that is to source games from outside designers. Mm-hmm. So I go to conventions like this, like Gen Con, like shows in Germany, like Essen, and I meet with designers, both new and established, and we sit down, they sit down and pitch games to me. So those two pitched us a game very close to what you see here, and I really like the core, I like the core conceit of it. It matched the, unbeknownst to them at the time, it matched the vision of what I was aiming at. And then we got to work, so all of the work we did was in development and engineering. So our job was to make sure that to take that really great game of theirs, polish it up, run it through our development machine, make sure the math works, make sure it stands up to replayability, make the replayability test, make sure it's that it's not broken between skill levels, as we call it. The better player will always beat the worst player, which is very dangerous in a family game. And we did a lot of art direction and product direction, which I was very, very closely involved in. So the idea for that was to say, I like this game, signed.
Oh. I have a question. Another question.
Certainly.
So how do you come up for your ideas when you make your own game?
So I sit around and I think, the worst thing about Cthulhu is that you don't get to shoot him in the face. Then I call friends of mine, in this case was Rob Davio, and I call him one afternoon, and I said, so he and I are, Rob, by the way, is a fantastic designer in his own right. He's designed Risk Legacy, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Pandemic Legacy, Betrayal Legacy, Legacy, Endless Legacy, Redacted Legacy, plus a whole bunch of other games. He actually had also designed a Mountains of Madness, which is a sort of gamer Cthulhu party game. And so we've been talking at conventions very often. We're looking for something to work together on. I called him one day and I said, would you like to make a game about shooting Cthulhu in the face? And he said, yes, I would. And that's where that came from.
One more question. Mm-hmm. Have you ever played Ace of Aces?
Have I ever played?
Ace of Aces.
Ace of Aces?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So basically it's a game where each player gets a book. Well, do you know of Wings of Glory? Or X-Wing?
Yes, I do.
It's similar to that, but instead of miniatures, each player has a book. And what they do is they pick a number, and both players turn to that page.
Oh, the Lost Worlds. Is this the Lost World series you're talking about from Flying Buffalo? From like
no.
Nope.
I don't know if it is, but
okay.
So each player has a book.
See, I'm old school.
Yeah.
You are the future. I'm like a dinosaur.
Yeah. And so basically, so one player chooses a move, mm-hmm. and both players turn to that page, and it's able to figure out where you are, so you can see your opponent on your book, and they can see you. And it has the same feel of Wings of Glory or X-Wing, but in 2 books.
I love it. No, I've not played that. I have played Lost Worlds, which is a game by a company called Flying Buffalo, which is as old as I am. Very, very old. Which is based on a similar concept, where you guys are playing, where both players have books that you will turn to the page. It's a combat resolution table in old gamer terms, with some hidden information that is divided in between 2 books. But yeah, I'm glad it was modernized.
Oh, cool. Actually, with Ace of Aces, it came out in 1980. It's not a recent game.
Okay, so it is probably. So does anybody know if that's part of Lost Worlds? Okay.
Oh.
The more you know. Shh. Like, oh, more questions. Let's give this gentleman a shot, and then you'll be next.
Hey.
Hello.
I'm really excited about Victorian Masterminds. Can you talk about that at all?
Me too. Yes. Victorian Masterminds. See, so you've actually hit on something I'm calling my blind spot. It's so every game development superhero, as we like to think of ourselves, has a critical weakness. In my case, it was something called the blind spot. So and I promise I'll get to the game in a sec. The way we think, the way our production and publishing process works is that, generally speaking, like everything I'm working on, including what I was working on this morning in my hotel room and what I will go back to work on tonight, is stuff that's going to be releasing at about this time next year. So to me, and it's so pervasive in the way that I think about stuff, I very often, including sometimes on customs diagrams when I'm customs forms when I'm entering a country, I'm like, oh yeah, it's May 31st, 19. It's May 31st, 2019, obviously. So I'm very, very cognizant of every game that is going to be released right now, because it's the window we're working on. The games that we are wrapping up in production right now are going to be coming out in February, March, April. So those are games that they're design locked. I can't work on those anymore. Games like Victorian Masterminds we wrapped up a couple months ago. So once we wrap that up, once it leaves the development purview completely, it goes into something called my blind spot. I assume that it is running along in production, and it's at the factory, and it's currently being produced, and I kind of forget about it, and I don't know exactly when it's coming out. However, I knew before Dice Tower Con I had the wherewithal to call the production department and find out when it's coming out, and they said, we can't tell you. Some things are so secret, even we don't get to know. We're aiming for it to come out. This is one of the few times I will use corporate speak on you guys. It is coming. We plan to have it come out Q4 2018. But I just signed off on the graphic design files. The game has not changed at all since since Antoine and I worked on it. We redid all the graphic design. With the wonderful Mathieu Arlot, who did most of the games I work on. He also worked on Death May Die. Re-envisioned the graphic design using a lot of the art from the previous publisher, Space Cowboys. But we just want to redo the look of it, and we actually found a way to optimize the components that we can actually charge a slightly lower price point that we were hoping for. I can't tell you what that price point is yet because I don't have a commitment for it yet, but it is reasonably priced TM. But anyway, for those of us who don't know, so Victorian Masterminds is a game designed by Antoine Boza and myself. We've been working on this game for 4 years, I think. Antoine came to me at Gen Con, I believe, I think it was 4 years ago. He said to me, Eric, he said, imagine, so we had this conversation, I'm telling you in English, but imagine we had this in French. He said to me, Eric, how would you like to make a game about shooting Cthulhu in the face? So he had this idea for he wanted to do a game about steampunk supervillains in Victorian England. At the time, it was called London Masterminds, and he wanted to tell the story, as it were, of the villains of all the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen's villains that they were chasing, but suddenly Sherlock Holmes went missing, and now you, as the villains, have the chance to cartoonishly, evilly spread mayhem across London, now all of Europe and the rest of the world. And by throwing a dash of steampunk and mad science, and you build these big, giant machines to cause mayhem across the city. So by kidnapping scientists and collecting resources and doing and missions, only evil missions, right? With such ridiculous, over-the-top imagery, such as I don't remember if we have the mustache of evil token anymore or not, but we have stuff like the monocle of forgetfulness, from people forget their turn. and I'm not sure how much of the art we've shown, but it's awesome. Like Antoine describes it as Pink Panther evil, and it's. I mean, you guys are running around capturing buildings, kidnapping scientists, and doing evil missions, but for points because it's a family game. It's a 45 minute to 1 hour game, 2 to 4 players. It plays. The only way I can describe it is it plays exactly the way you would expect a game by Antoine and myself to do. So it has his sense of flow. The turns are really quick. There's really interesting decisions to make, but it's not too brain burning. There's a lot. There's a nice amount of bluff. There's a nice amount of telegraphing actions, but it just flows so nicely and so smoothly. And it's got my love of asymmetry. So all of the players, even though it is a family game, all the players have a completely unique machine that works in completely unique ways. We spent a ton of time balancing those out, of course, but. You are spending time building this machine, and once you unlock it, you get more powers and better powers and a completely different way to play. It's a playtester favorite of mine. They've kept asking to play it over and over and over again, and it is coming out Q4 2018 TM. One more question.
I actually have 3 questions.
3 questions. You know the story about the genie, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you can't ask for infinite questions, but you can ask for 3.
Okay. My first question is, what's your favorite board game or card game?
What's my favorite board game or card game? My favorite board game card game is the game that I'm currently working on right now. The reason why I say that is because it has to be that. To my mind, if I'm working on a game that I'm not utterly obsessed with, that I don't feel at least has the potential to be my favorite game, I sort of feel like I'm wasting my time a little bit. So I know it's not exactly the answer you're looking for, but I feel it has to be that. I don't really have one favorite game. Like a lot of people, I'm an omnivore. I play lots and lots of different games. I try to tailor the games I bring to the table for the group that I'm playing with, and it's also very mood dependent. So the way, by the way, just so you know, I'm developing your question the way a developer develops a game design. I'm going to reframe the question as, what game are you currently obsessed with? And I'll say, that's an excellent question. In answer to your excellent question, right now I'm really obsessed with The Mind, which came out. I'm going to butcher his name, by Wolfgang Vosch. I'm German. You're not going to believe this, but if you guys haven't played it, I'm sure it's on sale here at the show. It's up for Spiel des Jahres, German Game of the Year. It's a fun little cooperative game where you got. With a deck of cards, number 1 through 100, you're not allowed to speak, and you're only allowed to use non-verbal cues to play. It's very fast. It's incredibly addicting and a lot of fun.
Okay, my second question is, what's your company's rival company?
What's my company?
Company's rival.
My rival?
Yeah.
What's our rival? Oh,
Competitor.
All right. Who are our rivals? I'm just curious. For career day, when you got your answers back for career day, did they say you are a marketing exec? Yes, I thought so. All right. So who's our rival? Well, so I'm at the risk of mythologizing our line of work. I would say. Our rival, so our top rival is I'm not going to name a board game company. I'm not going to name a tabletop game company because, to a degree, as an industry, we're all making games that you guys like. So if you buy a game by Fantasy Flight, who makes games, AAA games, a lot like what we're making, I'm happy because you're getting something. Oh, I get royalties on this too, so that's a bad example. But if you're playing a game by CMON Games or by WizKids or something like, I'm happy because you found something that's awesome for you and that's whet your appetite for a new type of gaming, which I'm sure is going to end up coming back and rising tide lifts all boats and all that stuff. to us, our main rivals, if we are to think of ourselves as tabletop development superheroes with critical weaknesses, I would say that our rivals are the Netflix show that you have been binging on right now, or the I was going to try to be hip and mention like some like concert, some band that the kids listen to nowadays, that like boppity boop beep game. Oh, yeah, Mozart. There you go. Yeah, so the new Mozart bebop band that you guys might be listening to, the newest AAA Sony title that's coming out for PS4, whatever that may be, which we may or may not even be working on. I don't know. Like. We're tabletop games are entertainment, and for us, our main competitors are all the myriad other forms of entertainment that you could be having. To my mind, I'm happier the more time that you guys are spending playing social games with your friends and family.
Okay, my third question.
Third question.
Yep, my last question.
Not infinite questions.
Yep. My last question is, are there any expansions in the making for your past games?
Yes.
Okay.
You're welcome. Have you been looking at our art? Oh, well, you should look at our art. Thank you. You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Another question? So I'd like to go back to the idea of broken between skill levels. Is that something that you test for in most of your games or all of your games, or a primary concern? Like, just to take one example from something that has your name on it, Warhammer Conquest is a personal favorite of mine. It was an amazing game, but I feel like that's something that very much hurt the game over time, because it's very difficult for new players to get into the game because you will get ground down by experienced players.
Sure. So that that almost dovetails into broken not only broken by skill levels, but broken by differing levels of enfranchisement, right? So like in every collectible living game with lots and lots of expansions, of course, the more we add to the game, especially in games like living card games or collectible games, there's always going to be that issue, right? The person who's more entrenched and more enfranchised will have an advantage. If you're just talking about the core game itself, in a lot of games, especially the upper echelon of strategy games, like Conquest or like Blood Rage, Blood Rage is unapologetically favors the more skilled player and the more familiar player. It works because the audience for those kind of games are people who are driven by that primal competition, and they're driven by mastery. They want to get better at the game, and they're perfectly okay. In general, I played games with people who lost to Blood Rage and cursed my name, I know. But they're who are generally much more tolerant and much more forgiving of getting whomped in a game as long as they learn something out of it. So I'm personally, this is a personal statement about designs, I'm, especially in strategy lifestyle games, I'm not a big fan of, I love catch-up mechanics, of course. I love game mechanics that allow players to always feel like they have a chance to win. But I'm a little bit allergic to artificial catch-up mechanics. So if it feels natural and if it doesn't automatically sort of punch you in the face with its rubber bandiness, I'm okay with it. Blood Rage's catch-up mechanic is that the points that you can get awarded from age to age is multiplied by about 1.8, 1.9. So like, even though what you do in age 1 is very important and dovetails into your strategy for age 2 and age 3, the amount of points that you are delivered in age 3 is much greater than age 1. So if you are trailing in age 1 and age 2, you can come back and swing it and turn it around. In, of course, games like Conquest, there's the two pseudo-diametrically opposed paths to victory. You may be losing planet after planet and just kill off your opponent's warlord and snipe them in one shot. Generally speaking, though, the better player is going to beat the worst player, and it's if their skill differential is huge, then you probably have to find somebody that's closer to your skill level, or get somebody to play down a little bit. that's generally, to me, it's more acceptable in that kind of game. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi.
I like your shirt.
Thank you.
I think that movie's going to catch on.
I don't know. It's iffy. 2 comments, 3 questions, but they're yes or no questions. So
2 comments.
Yes.
And a question. You guys
know-
are gaming the system.
We know that your favorite game is Clank. I mean, everybody's favorite game is Clank.
Damn straight.
All right. If you want a hip name, just say J. Cole. And Death May Die, is that like Zombicide and Arkham combined? Or?
Nope.
Okay. Kickstarters, are you looking at all at a lower entry point to gather more gamers?
Lower entry point, do you mean lower price point?
Yes.
So we just recently did Arcadia Riders, which was a lower price point than our past Kickstarter. It was something we called a flash Kickstarter. It was only on for 5 days. It was an experiment. And we are all about that. I mean, we're about, like, we don't rest. And so we are going to be, I'm not saying for sure that we're going to do more things exactly like that, but yeah, absolutely. We've got experiments on the way, both marketing experiments and design experiments.
Okay. And the last thing is, I heard you say LCG. Is CMON thinking at all to do an LCG?
Is CMON thinking at all about doing an LCG? Let's say never say never.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Just a quick disclosure.
I'm sorry?
For a quick disclosure, I am a representative of a small indie studio with some of my friends that we just put together. So I have a lot of questions that wouldn't be necessarily appropriate for this. My question for you is...
I like appropriate questions.
May I give you my business card and get your email so in the future I have a question and want to pick your brain? We can do so. Very cool. Then,
easy question, easy answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will write you back and you'll have my email.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Chief Operating Officer. That is a way more fancy title than Game Director. Yes, sir.
I was curious because now that Invader is coming out, does that mean that the Black Plague series of Zombicide is over? And now the space is there, or?
So, all right, I'm going to have to switch to corporate mode a little bit, and I apologize for that. But let us say that Zombicide is a huge, encompassing franchise with many different facets to it. And Black Plague and Green Horde sold very, very well. And as a publicly traded company, we tend to not abandon games that sell very, very well.
Nice.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am. Somebody might need help with.
How many games did you make?
How many games did I make? Too many. Unfortunately, I don't even remember. I'll bet you one of you guys know. Somebody in this audience knows.
More than 5.
More than 5, less than 105. Actually, I don't know. Maybe 105. I'm going to say 105. It might be true.
Actually, I have a little bit of a question. You spoke a little bit about game design and development. You said you had something that was in late design, early development. So what is the process of game, like the whole thing, from start to finish? So you have an idea, and then you design it, or you develop it? Are they the same thing, different? What's the difference?
What is the difference between design and development?
How long does it take to go from your idea through, is it design, development, and the next step, or is it the same thing?
That's a great question.
Does it happen at the same time?
When do I have to go? I'm looking for somebody with a time card. That's a lot. That is not an easy question to answer succinctly. How much time do we have? I'm going to talk until I'm toast. You may certainly ask me later. So, due to the powers of that be cutting us off, I will say that the difference. Next year, Dice Tower Con, I will do a panel called Design to Development to Production. and it will cover all stages of design, development, production as an art, a science, and a process. And we can I'll do lots of questions and answers about that, because it can easily fill an hour. And yes, certainly you can come talk to me about that later. And how long does it take to make a game? Until it's done. So the shortest time I've ever spent, the shortest time I've ever spent from waking up, from going, I need to make this game, to the time that it went to the printer was 1 week. That is ridiculous and crazy, and I will never do that again, because I don't hate myself. The longest that it's ever taken, I'll let you know when it's finished. I started about 20 years ago. You're welcome. So unfortunately, that's all the time we have. They did this to me, so we gotta go. Thank you, guys.